Now, last week I focused on the importance of scoping, and what happened was a deluge of questions came into me regarding how do you actually determine what the system boundary is and map out that flow of the CUI data. And this is a hot topic for us internally at Edwards Performance Solutions, because we are doing scoping and assessing for 800-171 actively for many organizations right now. This has been in our wheelhouse for quite some time. But working with our clients, what we do is we start with a data diagramming exercise. And that's a crucial component to back up an organization's request for a CMMC assessment and staying within that organization's stated boundary of the scope. If you don't have some kind of a data diagramming exercise, which is different from a network infrastructure diagram, then it's hard to back up that stated boundary. So I asked Sam Bell, who is our leader for all things CMMC assessments, to explain this a little bit more for today's video. Here he is.
Thanks, Joy. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the importance of data flow diagramming as you begin to prepare for a CMMC assessment. Now, a data flow diagram is different from your traditional network diagram, although having one of those is very, very important. You obviously have to understand what the boundaries of your network are, where your firewall is, your cloud providers, and how you have your internal network segmented to separate business functionality and the like. But the next step is to build out a data flow diagram and to really understand where the data and what type of data is moving across your network. So what this will do is basically start with identifying what systems live on the network, the type of users that interact with the systems, and then the type of use cases that they have interacting with the system and the type of data that they handle as they work with the system. When you map this out on your network, what you will find is a very, very different picture than just what the network diagram itself will show, because this will begin to identify where federal contract information is flowing, where controlled unclassified information is flowing, and the cases when that happens. A good example of that would be as if you take your simple payroll entry, somebody entering a timesheet, time on their timesheet. It's not going to be something you have to be concerned about if the time code itself is very generic and doesn't speak to the contract information. But somebody working in that very same system who is handling billing, who is a project manager for the facing the client with the government or with the contractor, those individuals may well be generating FCI and CUI when they interact with the system. Until you start to map these use cases and users out and how they're using the system, you really can't get a picture of where your FCI and CUI lives in the environment. Strongly recommend that if you haven't done this already, you take the time to do this and map this out. It's a really worthwhile exercise to understand what you're trying to protect. Thanks.
So yes, there's quite a distinction between the data flow diagram and the network infrastructure diagram. It's one of the first things that I received training on when I joined the Edwards Cybersecurity Assessment Team here. And after 21 years of doing the network infrastructure diagrams as an MSP and working in the MSP vendor community, it was very eye-opening to me that there is a lack of skill in bringing together a systemic approach to information data flow and making sure that you understand the network infrastructure. Those are two different things, and they need to be brought together in the assessor world in order to successfully scope an organization that is seeking certification. I have re-listened to the podcast that Regan Edens and Jeff Dalton put on. I think it was podcast number 4 on the CMMC standards, and it was focusing specifically on how to scope. And if you haven't already heard that podcast, I'm going to put the link in the comments here so that you can listen to it, because it is so crucially important. I think a quote that Regan said right at the beginning is, the scoping conversation is important because it's the foundation of everything CMMC. So make sure if you're unclear on system boundaries, on data flow diagramming, on mapping out the flow of the CUI, that you learn how to do this successfully, and let us know if you need some help. Thanks again for listening. We're all in this together. Have a great week.